Today, let's talk about how you can onboard vendors in Microsoft Fabric and Power BI using external user access. This video showcases the full setup step by step. So, let's get started. When you want to onboard a vendor, you have multiple options. One of the easiest options is to give them logins inside your system. For example, if your company is biworld.in, you can provide biworld logins to the vendor. However, this approach is not always applicable. So another option is onboarding vendors using the external user feature of Power BI and Microsoft Fabric. This is a very common setup today, where vendors work inside your domain using external users from Azure or Microsoft Entra. With this setup, you allow vendors to become external users in your tenant and then give them access to Power BI or Microsoft Fabric workspaces to develop content. To begin, the first thing you should know is where to find the official guidance for this setup. You can search for topics like how to share Power BI content with external users or how to distribute Power BI content. The article we are looking for is Distribute Power BI Content to External Users. I already have this article open, but this is how you can find it when needed. Let's quickly go through what this article explains. Power BI allows you to share content with external users through Microsoft Entra Business to Business, also known as Microsoft Entra B2B. Using Entra B2B, your organization can enable and control sharing with external users in a centralized place. Another way to share content with external users is semantic model sharing in Power BI. With this approach, external guest users can access shared content from their own tenant. Now, to make this work, you need to invite the external guest user. For this setup, you need support from two admins. The first is the Azure admin, who creates the external user. This person must have permission to create users in the tenant. The second is the Microsoft Fabric or Power BI tenant admin, who configures the required tenant settings so external users can access Power BI and Fabric content. Now, the first thing we are going to do is enable the Invite External Users to your organization setting. This setting must be enabled in your tenant. Along with this, there are a few related settings that also need to be reviewed and enabled. Next, you invite the external guest user. A guest user needs to accept an invitation only once the first time they are added to your organization. You can invite users using planned invites or ad hoc invites. Planned invites are useful when you already know which users you want to invite. You can also send these invitations through the Azure portal, but you must be assigned the user administrator role to do so. Now let's try this out. To log in as an Azure admin, open portal.azure.com and make sure you are signed in using an Azure admin account. After logging in, you search for users, either directly from the main page or by using the search bar at the top. You are now logged into your tenant and ready to invite your vendor. You click on Users, which opens the user management screen. From here, you click New User, open the drop-down menu, and select Invite External User. This opens the Invite External User screen. Here, you provide the required details. First, you enter the email ID of the vendor. In this example, I am inviting myself from another tenant where I have a similar email ID, so I can test the setup. So, enter the email ID, provide the name, and add a message such as added you as an external user to our tenant. Let's keep the remaining options as they are and click Review and Invite. The invitation process starts, and the invite is sent successfully. Now that the external user is invited, you continue on this tenant and move to the Power BI admin setup. Next, you set up Power BI or Microsoft Fabric for external users before they start working. You go to the Power BI service at app.powerbi.com, open Settings, scroll down, and select Admin Portal. Inside the Admin Portal, there are many settings. For this setup, you focus on two types of settings. One set contains the word Guest, and the other contains the word External. You configure these settings one by one. First, you review the guest settings. The most important setting here is guest users can access Microsoft Fabric. You enable this setting for the entire organization or for selected security groups. This allows guest users added to your Microsoft Entra directory to access Fabric items based on the permissions you assign. Next, you enable users can invite guest users to collaborate through item sharing. After that, you enable guest users can browse and access Fabric content. You also enable users can see guest users in the suggested people list, which helps when assigning workspace access. Some settings, such as email subscriptions and shared semantic models, are optional. In this setup, those settings remain disabled. Now we move to the external settings. We search for settings that contain the word external. You enable these settings based on your requirements. First, you look at external data sharing. This setting allows users to share read-only links to data stored in OneLake with collaborators outside your organization. This setting is enabled at the entire organization level. If you want users to share data externally, this setting needs to be enabled. Next, you review users can accept external data shares. This allows users to accept data shared from another Fabric tenant. This setting must also be enabled in the other tenant. After that, you review users can invite guest users to collaborate through item sharing and permissions. This is a very important setting for collaboration and data sharing with external users in Microsoft Fabric. In this setup, it is enabled for the entire organization. Next, you see the option where B2B guest users can set up and subscribe to email subscriptions. This setting is currently disabled. If required, you can enable it so users can send email subscriptions to external users. You then allow users to turn on external data sharing. Right now, this setting is enabled for the entire organization. In a real environment, you should limit this to a specific security group by selecting only the required users. This setting controls who can turn on external data sharing and share data with authorized guest users. You also review the OneLake external access setting. This setting allows users to access data stored in OneLake using applications outside the Fabric environment, such as custom applications built using Azure Data Lake Storage APIs. In this setup, this setting is not enabled because it is not required. At this point, you have reviewed and enabled the important external settings. You have also already invited the guest user. Now it's time to move to the vendor environment, accept the invitation, and start using the Fabric environment. You switch to the vendor side, which is the external user environment. First, you open Outlook and check for the invitation email. As an external user, you can see the invitation email. You make sure to treat the sender as trusted. You scroll down and click Accept Invitation, then approve the requested permissions. This confirms that the external user setup is complete. Next, you open PowerBI as the vendor. You refresh the page, open the account manager, and click Switch Tenant. You can now see the invited tenant. You select it and click Switch. After switching tenants, you are able to access content from the other tenant. At this stage, you do not see any workspace because workspace access has not yet been provided. To test this, let's create a new workspace and name it Test001, keeping the description and default settings the same, and we just change the capacity. Now select one of the available trial capacities and click Apply. The workspace is created successfully. This is possible because of the tenant settings that were enabled earlier. The workspace is now created successfully. At this point, you can start creating new items or assign access to this workspace. Now we go back to the vendor tenant. The purpose here is to check whether the workspace is visible or not. So we switch back to the first tenant and open PowerBI again. We are now back in the first tenant, and here you create another workspace. You click on New Workspace, give it a name, for example, Test-002, and then scroll down. Here you can see the capacity section. We scroll down, select one of the available trial capacities, and click Apply. The workspace is created successfully. Next, you assign access to this workspace. We open Manage Access, click Add People or Groups, and search for the external user that was created earlier. You can see the external user listed. We add the user and assign the admin role. Now it's time to verify access from the vendor side. We switch back to the vendor tenant, refresh the Power BI service, and go to Workspaces. At this point, you can see the newly created workspace, and we open it to confirm that access is working. In this way, you are able to onboard a vendor and provide access to a workspace. However, vendor onboarding does not stop here. There are a few more important steps that still need to be completed. Next, you need to provide access to connections and gateways. We go to Settings, then Manage Connections and Gateways. Here you create new connections, either cloud connections or on-premises connections. You can create a connection even without creating a data flow, Gen 2 data flow, or data pipeline. Once the connection is created, you open Manage Users, search for the external user, and assign the required permissions. Owner permission is only needed if you want the user to manage or change the connection. In this case, you allow access without sharing credentials. For on-premises connections, you also need to provide access to the on-premises data gateway. We open on-premises data gateways, check the gateway status, open Manage Users, add the external user, and assign roles such as connection creator and resharing. Now the external user is able to use the gateway. So in this way, you can fully onboard vendor resources into your environment. You create external users, provide access to workspaces, connections, and gateways, and allow vendors to work inside your Power BI and Microsoft Fabric environment. Thanks for watching this video.